The first question is this. Our country has two exploration programs. One is NASA, with a mission to explore the great beyond, to explore the heavens, which we all want to go to if we're lucky. And you can see we have Sputnik, and we have a Saturn, and we have other manifestations of space exploration. Well, there's also another program that in another agency within our government in ocean exploration. It's in NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And my question is this: why are we ignoring the oceans? Here's the reason, or not the reason, but here's why I asked that question. If you compare NASA's budget, annual budget to explore the heavens, that one-year budget would fund NOAA's budget to explore the oceans for 1,600 years. Why? Why are we looking up? Is it because it's heaven and hell is down here? Is it a cultural issue? Why are people afraid of the ocean? Or do they just assume the ocean is just a dark, gloomy place that has nothing to offer? I'm going to take you on a 16-minute trip on 72% of the planet, so buckle up, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to immerse ourselves in my world, and what I'm going to try to, I hope I make the following points, so I'm going to make it right now in case I forget, is everything I'm going to present to you was not in my textbooks when I went to school, and most of it was not even in my college textbooks. When I'm a geophysicist, and all my earth science books, when I was a student, I had to give the wrong answer to get an A. We used to ridicule continental drift. It was something we laughed at. We learned Marshall Kay's geosynclinal cycle, which is a bunch of crap. But in today's context, it was a bunch of crap, but it was the law of geology, vertical tectonics. All the things we're going to walk through in our explorations and discoveries of the oceans were mostly discoveries made by accident. Mostly discoveries made by accident. We were looking for something, found something else. And everything we're going to talk about represents a 1/10 of 1% glimpse, because that's all we've seen. I have a characterization. This is a characterization of what it would look like if you could remove the water. It gives you the false impression it's a map. It is not a map. In fact, I commonly ask people, I have another version at my office, and I ask people, why are there mountains here on this area here, but there are none over here? And they go, well, gee, and they try to be, say, is it a fracture zone? Is it a hot spot? No, that's the only place a ship's been. Most of the southern hemisphere is unexplored. We had more exploration ships down there during Captain Cook's time than now. It's amazing. All right, so we're going to immerse ourselves in the 72% of the planet because, it's really naive to think that the Easter Bunny put all the resources on the continents. It's just ludicrous. We are always constantly playing the zero-sum game. We're going to do this, we're going to take it away from something else. I believe in just enriching the economy. And we're leaving so much on the table, 72% of the planet, and as I will point out later in the presentation, 50% of the United States of America lies beneath the sea. 50% of our country that we own, have all legal jurisdiction, have all rights to do whatever we want, lies beneath the sea, and we have better maps of Mars than that 50%. Why? Okay. Now, I began my explorations the hard way. Back then, this was actually my first expedition was when I was 17 years old. It was 49 years ago. Do the math. I'm 66. And I went out to sea on a scrip ship, and we almost got sunk by a giant rogue wave. And I was too young to be, I thought it was I was a body surfer, and I thought, wow, that was an incredible wave. And we almost sank the ship, but I became enraptured with mounting expeditions. And over the last 49 years, I've done about 120, 21, I keep doing them, expeditions. But in the early days, the only way I could get to the bottom was to crawl into a submarine, a very small submarine, and go down to the bottom. I dove in a whole series of different deep diving submersibles, Alvin and Seacliff and Sienna, and all the major deep submersibles we have, which are about 8. In fact, on a good day, we might have 4 or 5 human beings at the average depth of the Earth. maybe 4 or 5 human beings out of whatever billions we've got going. And so it's very difficult to get there if you do it physically. But I was enraptured back in my graduate years was the dawn of plate tectonics. And we realized that the greatest mountain range on Earth lied beneath the sea. The mid-ocean ridge runs around like the seam in a baseball. This is on a Mercator projection, but if you were to put it on an equal area projection, you'd see that the mid-ocean ridge covers 23% of the Earth's total surface area. Almost a quarter of our planet is a single mountain range, and we didn't enter it until after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin went to the moon. So we went to the moon, played golf up there, before we went to the largest feature on our own planet. And our interest in this mountain range as Earth scientists in those days was not only because of its tremendous size, dominating the planet, but the role it plays in the genesis of the Earth's outer skin, because it's along the axis of the mid-ocean ridge where the great crustal plates are separating, and like a living organism, you tear open, it bleeds its molten blood, rises up to heal that wound from the asthenosphere, hardens, forms new tissue, and moves laterally. But no one had actually gone down into the actual site of boundary of creation, as we call it, into the Rift Valley, till a group of 7 of us crawled in our little submarines in the summer of 1973, 1974, and were the first human beings to enter the Great Rift Valley. We went down into the Rift Valley. This is all accurate except for one thing: it's pitch black. It's absolutely pitch black because photons cannot reach the average depth of the ocean, which is 12,000 feet. In the Rift Valley, it's 9,000 feet. Most of our planet does not feel the warmth of the sun. Most of our planet is in eternal darkness. And for that reason, you do not have photosynthesis in the deep sea. And with the absence of photosynthesis, you have no plant life, and as a result, you have very little animal life living in this underworld, or so we thought. And so in our initial explorations, we were totally focused on exploring the boundary of creation, looking at the volcanic features, running along that entire 42,000 miles. Running along this entire 42,000 miles are tens of thousands of active volcanoes. Tens of thousands of active volcanoes. There are more active volcanoes beneath the sea than on land by 2 orders of magnitude. So it's a phenomenally active region. It's not just a dark, boring place. It's a very alive place. And it's then being ripped open. But we were dealing with a particular scientific issue back then. We couldn't understand why you had a mountain under tension. In plate tectonic theory, we knew that if you had plates collide, it made sense. They would crush into one another. You would thicken the crust. You'd uplift it. That's why you get you get seashells up on Mount Everest. It's not a flood. It was pushed up there. We understood mountains under compression, but we could not understand why we had a mountain under tension. Should not be. Until one of my colleagues said, "It looks to me like a thermal blister, and the mid-ocean ridge must be a cooling curve." We said, let's go find out. We punched a bunch of heat probes. Everything made sense except at the axis there was missing heat. There was missing heat. It was hot. It wasn't hot enough. So we came up with multiple hypotheses. There's little green people down there taking it. There's all sorts of things going on. But the only logical was that there were hot springs, that there must be underwater hot springs. We mounted an expedition to look for the missing heat. And so we went along this mountain range in an area along the Galapagos Rift. And did we find the missing heat? It was amazing. These giant chimneys, huge giant chimneys. Went up to them with our submersible. We wanted to get a temperature probe. We stuck it in there, looked at it, went pegged off scale. Pilot made this great observation: that's hot. And then we realized our probe was made out of the same stuff. It could have melted, but it turns out the exiting temperature was 650 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. This is what a real one looks like on the Juan de Fuca Ridge. What you're looking at is an incredible pipe organ of chemicals coming out of the ocean. Everything you see in this picture is commercial grade copper, lead, silver, zinc, and gold. So the Easter Bunny has put things in the ocean floor, and you have massive heavy metal deposits that we're making in this mountain range. We're making huge discoveries of large commercial grade ore along this mountain range, but it was dwarfed. It was dwarfed by what we discovered. We discovered a profusion of life in a world that it should not exist. Giant tube worms, 10 feet tall. I remember having to use vodka, my own vodka, to pickle it because we don't carry formaldehyde. We went and found these incredible clam beds sitting on the barren rock, large clams. And when we opened them, they didn't look like a clam. And when we cut them open, they didn't have the anatomy of a clam. No mouth, no gut, no digestive system. They had inside them, their bodies had been totally taken over by another organism, a bacterium that had figured out how to replicate photosynthesis in the dark through a process we now call chemosynthesis. None of it in our textbooks.